Happy Sunday, everybody. I'm Dr. Gregory, and you're watching Dr. Gregory's Meta Moments. This is episode 12. This week, we're going to talk about a subject that hits really close to home, peptic ulcer disease or esophageal reflux disease. I had this particular diagnosis for over 20 years. I initially had symptoms when I was 16, where I had a sour taste in my stomach, and I actually threw up old blood. And then for years on and off thereafter, I would have severe burning sensation in my abdomen, worse at night. Certain foods made it worse, certain drinks made it worse, and I would become more and more dependent on medications like Pepcid, Prilosec eventually, Nexium, and it came to the point where by the time I hit medical school in my late 20s, I wasn't even able to go without the medication for a few days because I would be so symptomatic. So I would try to get off the medicine for 3 or 4 days, and the burning rebound was so bad I had to get back on right away. It was pretty miserable for those years. It also did cause a lot of issues with poor processing of food. I did get a couple of endoscopies where they will look down my throat to check for any permanent damage, which, by the way, is a risk of having peptic ulcer disease for a long period of time. If you have a lot of reflux of acid in your esophagus for extensive periods of time, it can cause a lot of cellular changes in your esophagus and potentially esophageal cancer. So it's something to worry about, something to consider. And I know it's a pretty common diagnosis, so I thought this is a good one to go through today, which means I'm going to be using the Metaphysical Anatomy book because, again, there's an emotional component to all physical diseases we have. And when I read this particular chapter on peptic ulcer disease, it was after I was, quote, cured of the disease. I'm asymptomatic now. I haven't had symptoms for at least 3 or 4 years, not taken any medication. And my guess is because I don't live through these behavioral patterns anymore. That's what my guess is. I don't live this type of life anymore. So when I had read this particular chapter, I was like, wow, I'm reading my diary. But it was more about my past life experiences than it is about my current life experiences, which is why I'm symptom-free. Yay! So like I said, not just because you have a particular illness or disease that's chronic does not mean that your body can't heal itself. There are ways to do so, and it starts within. It starts with your body and your mind and your spirit. So, and let's go through peptic ulcer. You seem to be feeling intense anger and resentment towards an influential figure for treating you in a way that made you feel trapped and controlled. You're suppressing intense rage as a result of not being able to speak up and feeling ignored. You seem to feel controlled by what others think. You may feel unworthy of being accepted as who you are. You've adapted to a facade that's more desirable to others. You may feel traumatized by influential people that should have protected and loved you, and instead your needs were met by negative reactions from short-tempered, influential people. You can't stomach how your parent made you feel. You need an outlet for all of the intense emotions. Expressing yourself might result in more rejection and abandonment, and you have associated self-expression with punishment and rejection. Silence has been a saving grace, yet it resulted in many emotions and traumas being suppressed and stewed on. Your own turmoil and emotional pain is eating away at you. You do not seem to feel safe moving away from the people and circumstances that are causing you problems. You have inevitably rejected yourself. You're still longing for love and acknowledgement from those who regularly rejected you. You don't feel good enough in the presence of your parent, and you are placing a great deal of pressure on yourself to be better than others. You want to behave like someone your parent approved of, yet you feel you can never please them. This is a never-ending rejecting cycle. You feel lonely and empty and fill your life with people who end up rejecting you as well. Good deeds have resulted in being acknowledged. However, the efforts cause you a great deal of stress. Wow, this hits really close to home. I pretty much was the golden child growing up, and having gone through high school, medical school, residency, straight through. I was finished with all of my training by the age of 28. I was very much dependent on the approval of my parents, and it came to a degree that it did define me. So I think what I was doing was suppressing this rage and feeling this sense of rejection when I didn't get the approval I wanted, which was at the time approval I wanted from outside of me. I wasn't giving myself the approval. And I recently watched a Wayne Dyer video, and he was talking about how he discovered that his purpose in life was self-reliance, which was why his spirit was born into a body where he grew up an orphan and had to learn self-reliance such that he could teach others. That really hit home to me, not because I agree with him, that's what I consider my purpose, but I found a purpose that I feel like I've come to this earth to show others, which is self-acceptance and self-love. So I feel like peptic ulcer disease was a symptom of my inability to accept myself and my looking to others for approval to feel more worthy. And I would behave like a show pony, is the words I used to say, such that I could get this approval. Now, the upside is it did drive me to become a successful physician and an honorable person, somebody who really relies on keeping their word. But what it also drove me to do eventually was to start recognizing that the approval that I seeked was not to be outside of me. It had to be within. Once that started happening, which was, I would say, 4 or 5 years ago, when I went through a pretty dramatic experience with my family of origin, to the point where we lost touch of each other for a few years, and it was quite dramatic. But what it did was that separation helped me to wake up to the fact that it was not them I needed to seek approval from. I really, really turned that emotional need inward. I spent a lot of time learning things like meditation, personal development, which is why I'm doing this right now. And ultimately started discovering more of a self-mastery in self-acceptance and self-love. Coming to that point, strangely, I started watching a video from Deepak Chopra, who's an MD, and mentioned that all human beings have the ability to process or create pharmaceuticals in their body. Every single pharmaceutical you can find in a pharmacy, you can make in your own body. So I found this extremely intriguing, and through a meditation session, I decided I was going to meditate my own healing in my stomach. So this was about, like I said, 3 or 4 years ago. I started believing that the medication I was creating was within my body, and I started healing myself within. I started visualizing a healed stomach, a coated stomach, an acid-free stomach, a symptom-free stomach, and it's crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but in 3 or 4 days, without medicine, I had no symptoms. I was symptom-free, and I had not taken medicine, which by that point, I would have absolutely needed some. But guess what? I kept meditating day after day after day, and it was working. It was working. My symptoms were gone. And ultimately, I've been without any sort of Pepcid, Prilosec, Nexium, any sort of acid-reducing medication for that many years. And then going back to reading this particular chapter reminds me that I don't perform those behavioral patterns anymore, which is also why I'm symptom-free. So again, it just proves to me that I'm the walking billboard for mind over body healing. And it's actually happened to me with some other illnesses, which I can get into later. But you are the master of your own healing. You are empowered enough to heal yourself. You don't necessarily need to rely on pharmaceuticals to heal yourself. Pharmaceuticals are a nice band-aid, and they can help you through a tough process or an acute process, but there's other ways to heal. Thanks for watching, everybody. Happy Sunday. Love you guys.